The truth is, most routines don't fall apart because someone's lazy or disorganized. They fall apart because they're trying to follow a routine that was never made for them. A lot of people are trying to copy what they see online, waking up at 5 a.m., running, meditating, reading, all before breakfast. But what if the problem isn't a lack of discipline? What if the real issue is that it just doesn't feel right for you? Nobody really says this, but you don't need to change your whole life to feel better. Sometimes, the thing that shifts everything is one small tweak, something simple, something that actually fits you. No pressure, no drama. That's what happened here. A tiny change that made the day feel lighter, more grounded, more real. If your days feel rushed, messy, or just kind of empty, maybe the answer isn't doing more. Maybe it's doing it differently. In this video, I'm going to show you the small step that changed everything for me, and how it can open the door to something most people rarely feel: real peace, without having to fix your entire life. And if this resonates with you, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this too. Ever felt like life turned into a non-stop race, but deep down, you weren't really getting anywhere? Everything has to be fast: the coffee, the clothes, the messages. And even when the day feels productive, there's still that strange emptiness left behind, like something important got lost in the rush. It's odd, isn't it? You do so much, but it never quite feels like enough. It's like running on a treadmill, a ton of effort, but no real movement. The worst part is how this pace slowly steals your peace. The mind doesn't stop. The body keeps going, sure, but inside, there's a tiredness no good night's sleep can fix. And then, quietly, a question shows up, one many try to avoid. What's all this for? That question isn't weakness, it's a signal, a little inner voice that's tired of the noise and wants something different. And sometimes, that change starts, not with a big answer, but with a simple, honest pause. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of silence, just a few minutes where no one's asking for anything, not the world, not your thoughts. And in that stillness, something begins to clear. It's not magic. It's just that, finally, you can hear what your body's been trying to say all along. You can't keep running without knowing where you're going. And when that realization lands, some mornings start to feel different. And a few of them, they hold the power to change everything. Some days feel heavy, even before the sun comes up. The body gets up, but the will stays on the pillow. And it's not just tiredness. It's a kind of exhaustion that comes from deep inside, like the soul is begging for a break. On those mornings, even breathing feels like effort. The mind tries to go through the usual motions, but nothing makes sense. It's like something inside says, "Enough, I can't keep doing this." And the scariest part? There's no clear reason, just a quiet urge to stop, without knowing what comes next. A lot of people have felt this, but almost no one talks about it. It's like being tired of your own life is some kind of failure. But sometimes, that deep fatigue is really a request for change. Not to give up, but to be honest. Honest enough to say, something's not right. Maybe behind the well-organized routine, there's a story waiting to be heard. And that story doesn't shout, it whispers, especially on mornings like this. And hearing that whisper might be the first step out of a cycle that drains everything and goes nowhere. Funny how, in the exact moment everything feels like it's falling apart, something new can quietly begin. Sometimes, what feels like the end is actually the beginning of a different kind of life. Not because the pain disappears, but because the way of seeing things shifts. And that shift can start with one small, unexpected action, a step off the script. Something done without overthinking, just to see what happens. And that's when a new door starts to open. Doing everything right doesn't always bring peace. Following advice, reading the right books, listening to the experts, it can help, sure, but it doesn't always fix what's inside. Sometimes, the more you try to do things the correct way, the heavier it all feels, like living someone else's life, full of perfect instructions, but not feeling present in your own. And that hurts in a quiet way, not because you're not trying, but because there's no real connection, not to what others say, but to what truly makes sense on the inside. It's strange to realize that even when everything looks good on paper, the feeling of being lost can still be there. And few things are more frustrating than trying your best and still feeling empty. It's not always about not having answers. Sometimes it's about not listening, not to others, but to yourself. That kind of listening doesn't follow steps or formulas, because every path is different. And the truth of what works for you, that usually lives in silence. Maybe the point isn't to throw advice away, but to learn how to filter it. Not every piece of advice fits every person. Sometimes what's missing is trying something no one else has mentioned, something that comes from within, even if it feels way too simple. And it's often in the moment when you stop trying so hard to get it right, that something new finally finds space to begin, something different, something unplanned, that might shift your whole day. Sometimes, what changes everything doesn't come from a big decision, but from a small gesture, done on impulse, a regular day, a strange feeling, and for some reason, something breaks the pattern. Instead of reaching for the phone first thing in the morning, there's a deep breath. Instead of rushing to fix everything, there's 2 minutes of quiet. It may seem small, but it's in that unexpected space that something new begins to take shape. It wasn't planned, it just happened, and that's exactly what makes it so powerful. A lot of people spend years waiting for the right moment to change, but in reality, the real turning points don't come with warnings. They don't show up in motivational speeches or perfect videos. They show up in exhaustion, in confusion, when, for no clear reason, a different choice is made, even without knowing why or where it'll lead. And that choice, simple as it seems, carries a quiet strength, because it doesn't come from the outside, it rises from within. When something is done without pressure, without trying to prove anything, the feeling is completely different. It's not about following a rule, it's about tuning into what feels real right now. And in that process, something inside begins to shift. You can't quite explain it, but you feel it. Maybe it's a walk with no phone, a quiet cup of tea while looking at the sky, or a handwritten note just for yourself. These small acts can spark a new way of being, and before you know it, the next few hours feel nothing like before. 3 minutes might not sound like much, but when used with presence, they can completely shift the direction of an entire day. Instead of starting on autopilot, the day begins with awareness. Instead of rushing, there's breathing. And those first few minutes, when treated with care, act like a key. They open the door to a calmer rhythm, one that feels more aligned, more real. It's not about doing more, it's about starting in a way that honors what's truly being felt. And that changes everything. Most people wake up already in a race. They jump out of bed, grab their phone, dive into urgency. The body moves forward, but the soul gets left behind. But when there's a pause, even just 3 minutes, without stimulation, without distraction, just to check in with yourself, the day begins differently. The mind slows down, the heart softens, and slowly, the rest of the routine starts to take on a new tone. It's like those few minutes give permission not just to function, but to actually live. The best part? It doesn't need to be complicated. It can be closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths, or writing down 3 words about how you feel, or simply sitting by the window in silence. What matters isn't the action, it's the presence. And when the day begins with that presence, everything else follows with more ease. It won't make the day perfect, but it will make it more grounded. And that tiny early choice, it can shape everything that comes after. A lot of people spend their lives trying to fix their routine. They try new methods, apps, productivity hacks, but the day still feels heavy. And then comes the frustration. Is something wrong with me? But the issue isn't always about organization. Sometimes, what really shifts the day isn't how much gets done, it's how the day begins. Because when the start is chaotic, everything else gets messy. And when the start is calm, even the hard parts feel lighter. A good start doesn't have to be complicated. No need for perfect plans or strict schedules. Sometimes, what sets the tone is as simple as how you wake up, the first thought you allow, or what you do in the first few minutes. It's like planting a seed. How you begin shapes what grows. A rushed start creates tension. A present one creates clarity. And over time, that difference spreads into your emotions, your decisions, your relationships. There's no need to fix the whole routine all at once. Just take care of the first step. If the beginning is mindful, the rest tends to fall into place. Because let's be honest, no one can control everything. But it's possible to choose how the day begins. And that small choice, as simple as it may seem, carries real power. Sometimes, that's all it takes to reconnect with what truly matters and make space for a different kind of rhythm. Slowing down wasn't easy at first. The mind kept shouting that it was a waste of time, too much to do, too many things to handle, and stopping felt like weakness. But surprisingly, it was in that slower space that answers started to show up. When the pace eases, something inside begins to breathe better. And that's when a powerful realization kicks in. Doing less doesn't mean doing it wrong. Sometimes, it just means doing it with more awareness. And that changes everything. Slowing down makes room to notice the things that were being missed, the way the body really feels, the emotions that were being pushed aside, the thoughts hidden behind all the rushing. It's like life suddenly becomes clearer, not because it's perfect, but because it's more honest. And that honesty brings a kind of calm that feels unfamiliar, but deeply welcome. A calm that doesn't come from handling everything, but from being present with what matters right now. The best part? When the pace slows down, nothing falls apart. The world keeps spinning. The to-do list is still there. But the way of showing up changes. There's more clarity, more ease, more presence. And here's the surprise. Often, things get done better, simply because they're done with more calm. And that calm, once it finds space, starts to shift even the simplest moments of the day. It's possible to have a full routine and still feel a deep emptiness no one else can see. The calendar may be packed, the tasks checked off, everything in order. And yet, something feels off inside. It's like carrying out a mission without remembering why. Days go by, things get done, but the soul isn't involved. And when the soul isn't present, everything loses its color. It's the feeling of being too busy to notice you're drifting away from yourself. That kind of emptiness doesn't go away with more tasks. In fact, the more you do, the more it grows. Because what's missing isn't productivity. It's meaning. It's presence. It's the sense that what you're doing is tied to something that truly matters. And that doesn't come from speed. It comes from intention. Sometimes it just takes one question. What, in what I do today, really touches me? That simple question can open up spaces that have been asleep for a long time. The interesting part is, once this emptiness is acknowledged, it starts to show new paths. Not in loud or instant ways, but like a quiet invitation, a call to look inward with more honesty. And in that reflection, you often discover that it's not about doing more, just doing things differently. And sometimes, that different begins with something small, a habit, a gesture, a choice made from the heart. And that's when reconnection begins, quietly but deeply. Being productive has almost become a rule. There's always someone saying you need to do more, be more efficient, make every minute count. But does that actually bring peace of mind? Not always, because it's possible to get a lot done and still go to bed with a restless mind and a heavy heart. Productivity fills the schedule, but not the soul. And when the soul feels empty, no checked box brings real satisfaction. Peace isn't measured by how many things get done, but by how each one is lived. Sometimes, doing less with more presence is more healing than doing everything in a rush. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be productive. The problem is when it becomes the only measure of worth. When value gets tied only to output and not to how something feels. That slowly creates a dangerous gap between who you are and what you do. The real challenge isn't to stop being productive, but to learn how to do it with purpose, with ease, with truth. When productivity and peace walk together, a new kind of strength is born. Quieter, steadier, and that strength begins to grow the moment you consciously choose not to get lost in the rush. Because in the end, what matters most isn't just how much you did, but how alive you felt while doing it. Sometimes, it doesn't take a big change to start feeling different. A small habit, simple and done with intention, can become a point of reconnection. It might be writing one sentence a day in a notebook, or having a cup of coffee in silence without a phone nearby. Or just sitting quietly for 5 minutes, breathing deeply. It may sound like nothing, but when done with honesty, it starts to change the way the rest of the day unfolds. The real shift isn't about what's being done. It's about the reason behind it. When space is made for yourself, even a tiny one, something inside begins to remember that it exists. And over time, that habit turns into a ritual, a quiet meeting with something that had been forgotten. And the amazing thing? The simpler the habit, the more powerful it becomes, because it doesn't ask for effort or results, just presence. And presence, when consistent, begins to heal old disconnection. It doesn't matter what the habit is. What matters is that it's yours, that it feels right inside, not just trendy on the outside. That small daily moment, even if short, can become a lifeline to something deeper. And when that connection is rebuilt, even slowly, everything around begins to reflect it. Because once someone finds their way back to themselves, their way of living naturally begins to change too. How many times has "I don't have time" really meant "I don't have energy"? The schedule might be open, but the mind is crowded, the body is tired, and the soul completely drained. It's possible to have hours free and still not be able to do anything, because the issue isn't the clock, it's the internal battery running low. And if that's not acknowledged, the blame keeps falling on lack of discipline, when what's truly missing is real, deep rest. Energy doesn't only come from sleep or food, though those help a lot. It also comes from how the day is lived, from the quality of your thoughts, the people around you, the pauses you allow yourself to take. When everything becomes pressure, energy drains fast. It's like charging your phone with a broken cord. It connects, but never really fills. Living like that wears you down, slowly, until there's only effort left with no spark. Looking at this honestly changes everything. Instead of chasing strategies to fit in more tasks, the focus shifts to what truly recharges. Maybe it's going to bed earlier. Maybe it's talking less with people who always drain you. Maybe it's doing something joyful, even if it's not productive. And when energy returns, life starts moving again. Because time was always there. It just needed someone whole enough to use it with presence. Motivation doesn't usually come back through willpower. It returns through meaning. And sometimes it all begins with a simple ritual, something small, but done with intention. It might be lighting a candle before starting the day, writing a single line of gratitude, playing a song that soothes the heart. It's not about what it looks like, it's about the gesture. A gesture that reminds you there's still life inside everything that felt flat. These little rituals work like anchors. They mark a restart, even on the cloudy days. When done with presence, they bring back that quiet feeling of self-care. It's not about doing things right. It's about making space to feel again. And in that space, motivation starts to find its way back. Not like a burst of energy, but like a quiet flame being gently relit. What's beautiful is how repetition strengthens it. The more it's done, the more the ritual becomes a quiet promise. I'm showing up for myself. And that changes everything. Because motivation that comes from care is steadier than the kind that comes from pressure. It's softer, but it lasts longer. And little by little, it starts to reach other parts of life too. All it takes is one gesture, one that says, it's still worth trying again. It's not always laziness when the body feels heavy. A lot of times, it's emotional exhaustion calling for help. But that's not easy to spot. The urge to lie down, the lack of energy, the mind shutting off. It can all look like lack of motivation, but deep down, it's often the weight of unspoken feelings, pressures held in silence, wounds never processed. And when that builds up, the body responds by slowing everything down. It's common to feel guilty. Why can't I do the simplest things? But very few people were ever taught to recognize emotional fatigue as something real. And it is, just as real as physical tiredness, sometimes even more. When the soul is drained, the body slows down to protect what's left. What looks like laziness is actually a red flag, a quiet call for rest, for listening, for care. Not to give up, but to recover from the inside out. Once that tiredness is honored, something begins to shift. Relief doesn't come from checking boxes. It comes from compassion, from realizing, I'm not weak, I'm just tired. And from there, new choices appear, softer ones, more honest ones, that don't demand constant strength, just presence. And in that presence, energy begins to return, slowly but surely. And with it, the space opens up to transform what comes next. Before any task, any message, any noise from the outside world, comes a moment of presence, just a small space to breathe and remember who you are. It's not about meditating for hours or following a complicated ritual. It's simple, a quiet moment. sometimes with eyes closed, sometimes staring at the sky, sometimes just feeling the body wake up. That moment became a priority because it sets the tone for everything that follows. The world demands speed. But when the day starts with self-connection, something shifts. There's more clarity to choose what matters, and more calm to face what can't be controlled. That tiny habit is like turning on an inner light before opening the window. And even on busy days, the space remains, even if it's just for 2 minutes, because that's the foundation. A reminder, I'm not just what I do, I'm what I feel, I'm what I care for. Creating that moment doesn't require a method or perfection, just presence. And presence isn't measured in time, it's measured in truth. When the day begins with a moment for yourself, everything else starts to settle into better alignment. Decisions feel lighter, the mind gets clearer, and the heart steadier. That's when it becomes clear. Maybe time was never the problem. What was missing was this kind of meeting, simple but powerful. Some people chase the ideal routine like it's a magic formula. Wake up at 5, cold shower, 10 pages of reading, a run, inbox 0. But here's the truth. The best routine isn't the one that looks good on paper. It's the one that works for the person living it. Everyone has a different rhythm, history, and need. What inspires can guide, but it shouldn't become a rule. Because a perfect routine doesn't exist. What matters is a routine that's real. When a routine honors who you are, everything flows more naturally. Not because it's easier, but because it's more aligned. The body has more energy. The mind gets clearer. The heart feels grounded. That doesn't mean tough days won't come. It just means you're more present to handle them when they do. And that presence doesn't come from doing things right. It comes from doing what makes sense for you. There's real freedom in knowing you don't have to follow anyone else's script. You can adjust, simplify, make it your own. You can start small and feel your way through. What matters isn't impressing others. It's finding yourself inside your own rhythm. And when that happens, even the simplest things feel strong. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about being sustainable. And what's light, true, and doable is what actually lasts. At the end of the day, maybe you don't need a perfect routine. Maybe you just need a softer start. A small moment that's truly yours before the world starts asking too much. And what if the only thing missing right now is one simple tweak? Something small, but real. What's stopping you from trying it tomorrow morning? What's been draining your energy before the day even begins? And more importantly, what could shift if you started your day by taking care of yourself first? If this message spoke to something inside you, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how this landed for you. And of course, if you want to keep learning and reflecting together, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who's also craving more ease in their days.